Hi, I'd like to talk a little about the context of Marlowe's day and age, the world he operates in, and the struggles about that. I want to do it at a level of generality that would not be appropriate for your final paper. And non-students in my class who mysteriously follow my YouTube, don't use this video as a source to cite in a research paper. That's just weak. Get a book. Get a book. Get multiple books. But for purposes of making discussion in our seminar go faster, so we're all on the same page, a quick lay of the land of what is going on in Marlowe's world. Marlowe's England is dominated by the European wars of religion. When you think when you think of wars of religion, you might go to Christian Islamic conflict, and there is Christian Islamic conflict in the 16th century. The Ottoman Empire is an extremely large, powerful Muslim empire, and they're very militarily strong, both on land and by sea, and they are in conflict. Off and on with Christian powers in the Mediterranean and in southeastern Europe and what we would call Central Europe today. That is not the big problem for Marlowe's England. That is not the biggest problem Europe has. The real wars of religion in the 16th century in Europe are between the Christians and the Christians. This is incredibly bloodthirsty, incredibly violent, full of atrocities. As an offshoot of the Protestant Reformation, which led to a lot of thinking, debate, theology, philosophy, it has a lot of good long-term results, but it also ignited bloodthirsty wars of religion between and inside European countries. The different kinds of Christians, the various kinds of Protestants, and the Catholics, sometimes different flavors of Protestants against each other, Protestants against Catholics, Catholics against Protestants, etc., leads to rebellions, civil wars, assassinations, like two kings of France in a row stabbed to death by fanatics. Two kings of France who had very different politics, still both stabbed by fanatical monks. Massacres, a word that enters the English language because of an incident in Paris that Marlowe writes about. The last primary text by Marlowe we will read, probably his last play, is called The Massacre Paris, which describes the incident in which some Catholic fanatics decide to kill every single Protestant in the city of Paris. It only takes them 3 days. That happened. Now, those of you who identify with various Christian denominations are going to find that if you want to find your group as the good guys, it's not going to happen. You will find various victims of violence and martyrs in your particular strand of Christianity if it existed at this point. That will absolutely happen, or the ancestors of your particular strand if your church was founded after the 16th century. You will also find in either your denomination or the ancestors' denomination terrible criminals committing terrible atrocities, murders, assassinations, civilians being killed, all the hits. It's important to remember these are not about the hot button religious issues of our politics. What we think of as religious disputes today, or things that are part of Christian political disputes, they're not talking about that at all. They are fighting and killing and murdering over things that we don't consider hot buttons at all. For example, the question of stained glass. Should you have stained glass in your church? Should there be stained glass that makes a picture? Well, that question was considered worth killing people over. If you're going to have communion, the Christian summer communion, should the celebrant hold the wafer here, kind of down by the vest, or up here? Worth killing people over. Because the logic goes, people's souls were at risk. See, if you're holding the wafer in the wrong place, maybe you're going to go to hell or lead other people to hell. So isn't it better for everybody that we kill your body. I'm not endorsing that position. That position is atrocious in the most literal sense. It leads to atrocities, but it is the position people took. Where does this leave our boy Marlowe? England has gone Protestant light. It has gone Protestant after some say it's gone Protestant, then back to Catholic with a bunch of executions, including burning bishops alive, torture, etc. Then gone Protestant again under Queen Elizabeth. One of the problems in the European wars of religion is in a monarchist system, the monarch decides what religion everybody else is going to be. Are you enjoying your First Amendment rights right now? I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying that no established religion thing very much. The logic there means, first, why would you assassinate, for example, the King of France? If the monarch picks the religion and you don't want to be the monarch's religion, what if you replace the monarch? And remember, they don't have retirement plans. There's only one exit strategy. It is the case that in Elizabeth's lifetime, there are numerous plots, in this case by Catholics, to rebel against her or assassinate her and replace her with someone from another kind of, who has some kind of genealogical claim to the throne, who is Catholic. That happens repeatedly. Her government develops the first real English espionage ring. It's called the First English Secret Service, though it's nowhere near as official or bureaucratic as that, in order to fight against these plots. Marlowe's, what documents we have that associate him with espionage, he would be involved in kind of infiltrating these plots of Catholics scheming against the throne for rebellion, assassination, etc. These are very real things. There's also a danger that a European power like like Spain, France, or the Habsburgs, who are aligned with Spain. The Habsburgs rule both Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, all of Austria, Hungary, Germany, etc. They're extremely formidable. Are going to attempt to invade the country again. They had tried in 1588. The Spanish had sent a massive fleet. The invasion fleet didn't get there. It was defeated at sea. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So there's a lot of tension. This is why somebody like Marlowe, a poor boy who's gone to the university, might get caught up in questions of espionage, because there's a kind of constant fear of religious terrorism. Marlowe went to college on a scholarship designed to train him to be a clergyman, to be an Anglican priest. He very much did not become an Anglican priest, partly because he doesn't seem like the type to us, but also he is part of, there was a project, the Elizabethans, Elizabeth realized she didn't have enough ideologically reliable Protestant preachers who she could trust to go out and speak to the parish church, and give a sermon. So there had been a project over decades to pump a bunch of young men through the university system, turn them into good, reliable Protestant ministers to go out and do the government church's line. The problem is this project's gone on too long. People like Marlowe are sent to college on scholarships in that basic program, but by the time Marlowe gets to college, the actual jobs being trained for are scarce. They've actually filled up those slots. There was a kind of surge of training future Anglican ministers, but then now they were training too many, and those people, especially the poor scholarship boys, don't have easy ways to make a living. So Marlowe is clearly, after graduation, scrambling, trying to write for short money, and he doesn't make a lot of money as a writer. Writing plays, trying to do this kind of stuff, but remaining pretty hungry. That is also part of the context which he's in. Where are the Muslims in all this? They are also the enemies of Protestant England's biggest enemies. They fight the Spaniards and the Holy Roman Empire. They fight the Habsburgs. So while there's Islamophobia in Elizabethan England, and there is, they're not considered the biggest threat. They're the enemy of the enemies. The Elizabethans and the Ottoman Turk Empire have an enemy in common. Remember that when you're reading Tamburlaine parts 1 and 2. The Muslim world isn't the worst thing, isn't the biggest devil in the Elizabethan imagination. That would be the Pope. The Pope, who had actually officially blessed any attempt to depose and kill Elizabeth, who'd made a public statement saying it's not a sin, she's not illegitimate, it's not a sin to rebel against her, and if you pushed her out, that wouldn't be wrong. That might actually be a good thing. Bad times. Very, very bad times. One last thing about the role of Catholicism in Protestant England. You got to remember that England has centuries of native history that's super Catholic. So a lot of folk and popular traditions, a lot of their folk culture has had to be pushed aside because it's too Catholic. There are some extremist Catholics who are mostly being trained overseas in places like the seminary in Reims to infiltrate England and start terrorist plots to overthrow the government. This is real. We do not, the phrase, for us, the phrase Jesuit assassins sounds insane. This is not what St. Ignatius trains people to do anymore. Not so funny in this period when some Jesuits are actually involved in plots against Elizabeth's life. And then there are counterplots and entrapment and all this kind of stuff. And terrible, ruthless espionage and torture trying to discover these plots. And sometimes making plots up and then arresting and executing anybody who signs up. Make up a fake terror plot, see who joins, kill them. We would call that today entrapment because, of course, these people didn't join a plot that actually existed. You made up the plot. If it weren't, you didn't make up the plot, they wouldn't have committed a crime. There's a small group of people who are activist extremists who are okay with violence to restore Catholicism. There's a much wider group, it seems, who don't want any violence, who are loyal to the crown. They just want their stained glass back. They like bells, they like incense, they like they want to have festivals on saints' days. They like the old religious drama that was extremely Catholic, that was part of the English tradition. Marlowe is operating in this world of incredible international and intranational civil religious conflict.